right, you're all set.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to ECS June annual board meeting. We'll do a call to order. And I will start. This number today with
Just ready. Tiffany Jimenez.
Betty Beach.
Stanley London.
Brandon Forks.
Rohit Shari, Mason Underwood.
And Romagny.
Some folks on
And Maddie on.
And then, thanks everybody. Thanks for coming out tonight. Pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our mission, the mission of ECS is to educate your student to a high academic standard using innovative curricula that will foster knowledge, love, and respect for the environment, and preserve for future generations. We grow citizens. Our vision is that every ECS graduate will be actively engaged, citizen driving thoughtful change in the world around them. So item 3, we are going to have an executive session, and the board will go into recess. It will last for approximately an hour. If we could take the public portion of the meeting, will resume at that time. Do I have a motion for executive session?
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so motion to go into executive session. See you all.
Okay, you're good. Live.
Hi, everybody. So after that interlude, we will move to item 4, which is the relocation recommendation.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity just to share this publicly as a recommendation, official recommendation. But as you know, back in October and November, we were thinking about different potential locations for the middle school and high school. And we preliminarily recommended in November to the board and to the ECS community in general that we relocate the middle school and the high school to 743 Technology Drive along the Monongahela River. And tonight, what we'd like to do is change some of that language and actually make an official recommendation. So we'd like to officially recommend moving the middle school and the high school to 743 Technology Drive along the Monongahela River. I'm just going to make a brief presentation to just show some key points here. The first 2 slides are slides that we've used the whole time through. We made some modifications to it, but the goals remain the same. Our goal in this process, which started, it started when I arrived in 2024, but it actually preceded me in some ways, in many ways, the goal has been to create long-term sustainable K-12 facility solutions that lift up the mission of ECS, and which is to educate each student to high academic standards using innovative curricula that will foster knowledge, love, and respect for the environment and preserve it for future generations. That's been our goal, and we've been questing after that. And as you know, we currently own 862 Milton Street, which is where our intermediate school is located. And we lease our primary school, which is on South Braddock Avenue, our middle school, which is where we are now, and our high school on Chisholm Street. In the fall of 2024, we began to think about different possible options for the high school, in addition to the option of Hamilton Avenue. And we also started to explore the possibility of whether or not it would be a good idea, or potentially a good idea, to co-locate a middle school and high school program in the same facility. In the winter of 25, so it seems like eons ago, but it wasn't really, we solicited proposals from property owners around the city. And in the spring of 2025, we reviewed a number of proposals. And the number that's really important is we visited about 10 sites, and I believe we received 7 or 8 complete proposals. And then one of which was the Elmhurst proposal. In October and November of 25, we preliminarily recommended both to the team here internally and to the board and the wider community. The preliminary recommendation is to move to Technology Drive, relocate to Technology Drive. And tonight we're changing that from a preliminary recommendation to an official recommendation. And we are on path to open the building in the beginning of the 26-27 school, or 27-28 school year. Sorry, I lost my mind for a second. Okay, the next slide is the criteria that we've been using through this entire process. These were the things that guided us as we tried to figure out where best to locate these two schools. We thought a lot about both the environment, equity, and collaboration, all of which are key values for ECS. And you can see there some of the criteria we use. Okay. So again, this is the official recommendation. This is the building. Again, it's along Technology Drive and 2nd Avenue, right near the Monongahela River. Okay. And I wanted to just share again some of the main lease terms that have been finalized at this point. It's a 20-year lease with the two options for renewal, 5 and 4 years respectively. So potentially a total number of years 29. The lease rate starts at $23.5 a square foot, $23.50, square foot, with the total square footage currently standing at 92,119 square feet. That may fluctuate as we finalize the design, but it's probably going to stay very close to that. There's an escalation rate on the rent, base rent of 2.5% annually, which means in the first year our rent will be $2.16 million. And in the 20th year, that rate will escalate or jump up to, over time, jump up to $3.46 million. just like our our middle school and our primary school, and similar to our high school, we will have operating expenses with that building, so we will have to pay for gas and electric, what cleaning services and do maintenance and all that sort of stuff. We will also have, like we do with buildings that we lease from for-profit entities, we'll have to pay real estate tax. We estimate at this time the real estate tax costs for that building to be $300 and some odd dollars, 322 is the number we're currently working with. We will also have to think about parking, both for our employees and our parents, and what is that going to look like. We know that the building has access to parking in the garage across the street. We need to open up conversations with you, but they know that we're interested in that. We've budgeted for some number of years of parking at a rate that we think is the market rate that we're going to honestly try to negotiate that. We won't take possession of the property until June 1st, 2027, as the lease is currently written. It's not final yet, that's the language that's in there now. And so it's that date and these other conditions, a zoning variance must be approved. We've had all of the zoning meetings that we need to have, except for our hearing before the zoning board, which will take place on July 9th. So that should be fun. And then the Act 2 certification. Act 2 is the law that I think that's what it covers, things like brownfield remediation. And so we want to make sure that the building, and this would be for the property that the building sits on and nothing else. We want to make sure that that Act 2 certification is received before we take possession of the property. We want to do that because we want to make sure our students and our employees are safe. We believe that's the case anyway, but we want to make sure we want to have that certification. But in addition, we don't want to have any liability that would accrue to ECS for the prior history of that site. The Act 2 certification would give relief for that. So it's really important we get those two things. And then the construction obviously has to be complete. So actually it's 3 conditions if I think about it. Okay, next slide. Thank you. We did meet with Elmhurst today, and I need to say that the partnership that we have with them is just that at this point. We've only been sort of interacting with them really earnestly since November, but it really has flourished into a nice partnership. It doesn't mean we agree on everything yet. But we have agreed on most of the topics. We were planning to talk about finance, green space, and the lease start date. I think we pretty much cleared all but one of those hurdles. It's the green space, and so that's what we're working on at this point. And our goal is to have a draft lease. Here I wrote July 22nd, but that was very optimistic. I'll say by the end of next week, so the end of the week of July 22nd. Okay, next one. You go back one. There you go. So here I just wanted to show, and we're going to put this presentation on the website, and we're also going to put images of the design documents. This is actually not the most recent version, but this is pretty close actually to what the plans for the first floor look like at this time. It's not quite the same, but it's close. And you can see in this first floor image, and in the other images, that a great deal of effort has been put into this. So not only do we have architects, IKM Architecture, and Elmhurst, Elmhurst has been a part of all the discussions, and extremely helpful. Mascara, who's the contractor, is helping with some of the stuff. But we have, I think, 17 ECS team members, all the way from Dr. Cribs and Michelle and Vicky. But we have also some folks who represent some of our special programming around music and robotics. We have teachers of different areas, all from some from the high school, some from the middle school. We have principals involved. So it's been a really great effort, and there's been a lot of thought about how to best build a building that would serve kids and meet our academic needs, and really be the kind of facility that we think our team and our students deserve. And so the design documents were completed on June 12th, and Mascara, the contractor, is working on preliminary cost estimate. We have a running estimate at this point where they're going to actually give us a revised version of that by the end of the week, and then they're going to actually price this completely by early July so that we can enter a guaranteed price into the lease, which we're hoping to present to the board officially in July. Okay. Next one. As I mentioned, we had a community meeting for zoning on June 8th, and we have the zoning board hearing on July 9th. The certification, the Act 2 certification, Elmhurst, I forgot to mention this earlier, Elmhurst has received a comfort letter, which is a letter that basically says, look, if you go through this process, we anticipate the certification will be provided. But, and they've subsequently started that process, but it will take approximately a year. And so we expect that to arrive in the first quarter of 2027. Okay. Oh, back one. So this is just a list of the dates that we're sort of working on right now. So we have the design documents, the revised cost estimate, final lease terms, again, probably week of the 22nd, which is that particular day. A guaranteed maximum price, that shifted a little bit. It's going to be from the 1st of July between that date and approximately, and somewhere in there, they're going to get us a price. We're working on a financing option. We expect to have that actually done before the July 3rd, that we're receiving that as a benchmark date. And the final lease should be done before that, but just in case we put that, just no doubt. And our goal is to have those documents ready for the board for a July 14th board meeting. The reason for that is that in order to get this construction started on August 28th, so we can actually open the school on the 28th school year, we are going to need to start making Elmhurst and Sarah have to start ordering equipment and doing some things to get this rolling. They really actually want to do it now, but the latest they could do it would be July 15th. That's the target date. So we put that decision as hard up against that, as far away from now as possible. That's the furthest out we can be. So the next slide. So the proposed, I think we're about to put this out for public notice, but the proposed meeting date will be 5:30, July 14th here at the middle school. And we will we'll put information on the portal. As I said, we're going to have stuff on. Kristen's already been working on the website, so we'll have that up and running tomorrow with new information. But I need to just say again, we really have appreciated the work with Elmhurst, but also there's been a tremendous amount of work, particularly Michelle, Mandy, Vicki. These guys have been working on this for a long time, and they have regular jobs, and then they have this, and it's actually like 2 full-time jobs, and I'm not kidding. And then we have a whole bunch of team members, as I said, who have been coming to meetings every week to talk about the design, share their input and their feedback. We've also had good feedback from parents. We've had 2 standing committee meetings. We've gotten good feedback from parents there. Obviously, other ways from parents as well. We have a lot more work to do, but we feel that it's right to make this as a recommendation, and we believe everything will come together so that we can get the board good material to review and something serious to consider at the July 14th meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. I appreciate that. Secondary comments about the team, so actually how hard everybody is working, and sympathize with the idea that sometimes going to get 2 full-time jobs. But of course, anyway. So thank you. I really appreciate that. And, we'll keep it on. Doing our plan on the important thing for the future of school. So moving, are there any questions? Sorry about that. Are there any other comments?
From the steering committee today, did they see this presentation as well?
And also, we go a little deeper into the design document so we can see and share some of the changes. There aren't radical changes from the earlier version that they'd seen, but I'm still good to talk about.
That's right, and maybe the question on, I know you had to adjust the scope just to make sure that you're saying the budget range that you're considering, any major kind of, major or minor compromise you kind of use as well?
Actually, no. So one of the things that's interesting is, and we'll talk about this in a minute, there's a resolution to enter into a limited, it's about the solar array. I'll read it again, but the limited notice to proceed in the purchase of inverter. And Chen, forgot, and Chen has been an amazing asset for the team. And we had originally cut out the solar array, because we were trying to save money. And Anne, did a tremendous amount of research, and she thinks she's got a good recommendation for us. I'll share more about that. So there were some things that we cut out that we think we might be able to bring back. And since the last time we talked, it hasn't really been much that we felt like we had to say.
That's great. Excellent.
Any other questions or comments? I didn't see anything about public comment, I assume there is none. Okay. Number 6 is the fiscal year 2026-27 school budget. Still a little extra thing that Michelle gets to do. So, I don't know, any resolution or comment on that? Or?
Yeah, just some brief comments. So, the budget has been available for the last month. There have been a few internal questions that we've addressed and gone through. So those have been reflected as necessary in the budget. So again, it has been available at each of the school buildings and everything on the website. And there has been a slight tweak to the budget, so it's been updated for some projection information around special education tuition, so there was a slight decrease. And then our rent reimbursement based on current projections, so that was a slight decrease as well for 123,000 overall decrease from revenue. So we're just, our total budget is just under 33.6 million. The surplus of $880. Just a reminder that our revenue sources are still consistent, so we have our 94% of our tuition revenue represents our revenue, and 4% of our federal sources represent our federal sources made up our state. And state sources are 1%, and then ECS is 1% as well. I did want to highlight some of our new staff that are reflected in the budget. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone is aware of the new staffing that is built into the budget. So we have a new human resource manager that will help support our HR department. It's definitely well needed. And also a financial analyst that will support the finance office. Very much looking forward to that as well. So, and then technology project management will support our tech team and quickly. And then also we're very excited about a camp and professional development director, which is a new partnership for this next fiscal year that we're very excited about. With Chatham and the primary school long-term substitute that will backfill our communities in our new induction program. That Andy had before we go around this and has been approved, so that's very exciting. And then also our middle school food and sustainability assistant teacher, that is a new resource that is needed in middle school. And then our high school building-based substitute teacher, that's a position that has been put in new this year. Because additionally that was needed as last year. Then also a high school special ed teacher is based on our needs that we're looking for next year, so that is a new position. So I just wanted to just brief highlights of some new things that were reflected into the budget. I wanted to make sure that you're all aware of those new positions. So the budget is available and for you to question and to review and vote on today.
I have a question. For when, I'm gonna speak this into existence, when the high school, from the line, we're gonna have to hire a lot, many more teachers, right? It's better to be at the class size growth. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay, so, yeah, no, I'll start with, is that a wrong something?
Yeah, it's not going to be that many, there will be a few positions that are needed, but we have long felt that our high school program needed to be reflective of our eventual high school program, whether we have a very full 400 students or not, and so we're just down, I believe, like one math teacher, one science teacher. So, and then obviously we'll be adding special education students, or teachers, if we have special education students.
Great.
There's probably a handful of teachers.
That's not to say that there won't be any new positions. There may be some positions as we think about, you know, how do we want to operate the building. We may have some debate about that, but at this point, we haven't put any in. We don't expect it to be a massive increase.
That's great.
And I'll just say one thing about the camp and professional development director, that we're putting that in the budget. We would not sort of move forward with that until we come up with an agreement. We've been talking with this particular organization, and we hope to have something to present to the board at some point in the fiscal year, probably sooner rather than later, but we're not ready to do that. We just want to make sure that we're prepared if we are able to do that.
I had a question, like, you have a, this is from some, I was looking at an older financial data from the PPS school district, and other state school districts, and now this is like from a couple of years ago, so it will be like kind of code funding, code era funding not incorporated into this, but it looks like, I think my impression is from PPS is like a fraction of their revenue from federal and state sources. It looks like ours is about 5%.
Yeah, just 1%.
Yeah.
For federal and state.
Yeah, federal and state, yeah, so our revenue is tuition and then federal and state revenue
Yes.
total is about 5%. And my impression of at least from prior years, the school district the public school district is more like 10 to 15 or even 20%, depending on the year. Is that something that is understood, and I'm reading that correctly? I mean, you might not know a lot about that, but yeah, I guess the question I was asking is, because I know that probably PPS has access to more federal and state funding just as a public school district than a typical charter school. But has there been an overview of those programs where recently in the last 5 years or so, where ECS has looked at all the additional funding sources that the PPS is receiving and understood whether they're truly eligible for any of them that we're not receiving right now, that ECS is eligible for any that we're not receiving right now?
I mean, I know some of the federal funding programs we're not eligible for, so like Title III, we don't meet the threshold of receiving funds directly for that. But we definitely can look into the other options, so, yeah.
I mean, among all the things, I'm just thinking of like kind of in the long term, you know, if there is more revenue that ECS is eligible for from non-tuition, revenue, it may or may not be worth it to pursue it because it might be a lot of effort, ECS might qualify, but that difference in funding is pretty stark. PBS is getting a lot, it is receiving a lot of money from the state and federal sources than ECS.
Question. It makes me think of, most of the federal funding sources that we're talking about from a budget perspective, my recollection is that these are primarily Department of Education programs under the Education and Traffic. Yeah, that's true. And so they're very eligible for it, but I guess to Megan's question, and I guess maybe not as much a question as a comment, sort of long term, because you have other things going on right now. But, you know, outside of just Department of Education programs, you know, there's so many types of federal programs that relate to, maybe even not specific to K-12 education, but related to facilities, for example, or clean energy, things like that. I think it is worth casting a ballot a little bit to see if there are other things, other potential revenue sources at state or federal or grant level. I know we do with our internet, for example, try to get money from the federal program, which obviously is specific to the Department of Education. Their budget is close to,
E-rate, I forget. E-rate, where does E-rate?
Where's USAC?
E-rate.
E-rate comes from USAC.
You can use that.
SAC. I don't remember what it stands for.
There's just so many things and it's always changing, of course. But yeah, I think that's worth looking into as potential other revenue sources. You can use it, but, they are out there.
Yeah, and we're also hoping to get our EITC application. So that we can. Some additional dollars out for next year.
Yeah, I know, this isn't like a long-term thought, but it's a, if there are sources out there that we're pursuing, and ECS can, dedicate a small team or, hire somebody that might be with it.
Yeah, I think you get on that.
Yeah, right. It's only that.
But there you go.
It's probably gonna be. All right, any other comments or questions about the budget? Okay, and I will read the resolution 2026-06-2218. Be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of the school that the 2026-27 school year fiscal budget and charter school be approved as proposed. Do I have a motion? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Budget's adopted. Thank you, everybody. Moving on to the consent agenda. I'm just going to read those covered 7.1, 7.2, 7.3, which is minutes. Financial reports, payments of $500. I'm going to read the resolution and any questions. Resolutions 2026-06-2219. Be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of the school that the consent agenda for June 17, 2026 be approved. Questions, comments? Okay. Is it easy? Do I have a motion to vote then?
Most approved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Resolution is adopted. Thank you. Number 8 is quotes, invoices, and contracts over $10,000. So there's 8.1 through 8.6 here, which are a number of contracts. I don't know, does anyone want to say anything about them? We can also just vote unless anyone has questions.
I have a question on 8.2. And only on 8.2. As I understand this, I just want to learn a little bit more about this because from what I understand, this would be, or my concern is that this contract takes place in Monroe, and we have, our campus is here in East End, and so I'm just a little concerned about the travel time required to satisfy the, and weighing that against the educational aspect of like.
Yeah, so we do need to have a CTE program, and we are not yet at a place where in our school we can provide our own career technical education program. So we're partnering with the Career Technical Center. It does happen to be in Louisville. We went and looked far and wide to see if anyone would enter into an agreement with us. This is the one that would, interestingly. So most of them are, but it's a consortium of school districts, and most of their boards are made up of one member of a school board. We are not able to enter into that same agreement. So this is just allowing our students to participate, but our students do get like kind of after all of those students. So when they go to look to see if we get into the like lottery of their program, they pick from their consortium first. So it's difficult for our students, but they really want to go. They came and did a presentation, and students are interested, many students applied, but we weren't able to kind of get through any of this until we got this agreement with them. So we're really excited about the program. PRT does have a stop that's not exactly ideal, but it does get them there, and our kids are excited about it. The good news is they would only have to go like half day, right? So they could leave from their home there, or they could leave from here, there, and go home after the program. So there are some students that it's okay for, or it's like distance. Ideally, we would have a program.
I do there was some, there, so that's why I want to learn more about
Absolutely.
that.
I'll just also say, as a former advocate and school policy person, I think the way that we set up career technical education centers here in the Commonwealth is something that we can't fix at ECS, but it is something that needs to be looked at across the state. If we're actually going to try to get students prepared for real and meaningful careers. And I'll just leave it at that. But I think this is a good workaround for us for the moment. I will just take a quick moment to note that because of work that our superintendents and our high school principal and others did, we did have 2 students, those were graduating who saw this. We had 2 students that did receive drone certification and actually received a real drone, each of them, as a part of their work here at ECS and a partnership that we have with the House. So that's the kind of stuff that Mandy and her team are working on. They're doing a tremendous amount of work on that front. So.
And that partnership with Jose House, they are hoping to expand their program so that that program can then actually become a certified CTE program. They're working on it still, so it will be not this school year, but next school year.
It's amazing to me as much talk as there is about workforce development programs and career technical education, money that is actually put into. It's hard to find somebody to provide it, and I really understand the disconnect, but it sounds like my only question about this is it says in the agreement that it would cost you $4,800 per half-day student, prorated based on the number of days. Well, it doesn't say for what, is that for years? Okay. Just make sure. Contract drafter. Kind of makes sense. Okay. Any other questions or comments on 8.1 to 8.6 and these other agreements? There are no more. Then will be the resolution 126-06-2220 be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of the school that contracts over $10,000 to June 2026 be approved. Do you have a motion? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Yeah.
Any opposed? Motion passes, resolution is adopted. Thank you. So next one would be number 9, which is our policy adoption section. We have last month we put a policy out, our attendance policy, which had some proposed amendments from our current version. It's been out on the website, I believe, for the last month. Have you received any comments? Okay. And so we haven't received any comments. And so I'm going to read the resolution and then I'll open up for any questions or comments from the board. Administration. It's resolution 2026-06-2221 be resolved by the board of trustees of the school that the policy, attendance policy be approved as amended. Any questions or comments about the attendance policy?
I'll just say thank you for the updates. I think it's a lot more clear, including the family travel in one big bucket. I think this looks like a nice thing that hopefully will bring some clarity to you also. Thank you for the work on this.
Thank you.
I'll pass that along to
Thanks, Sophie. Okay, if there aren't any other additional comments, do I have a motion?
So,
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? All right, the motion is adopted. So the resolution is adopted, motion passes. So moving on to number 10, we don't have any policies for discussion, but do you want me to just give a couple comments over this? We are, as some of you are likely aware, and some of you probably not, as part of the legislation that was passed last year, there were a number of changes made in various places to the charter law. A lot of them around compliance and ensuring that board members the financial disclosures and a variety of things of that nature. One of the areas pertaining to audits that the independent audits that schools typically conduct, and provided that I think the additional language in the statute basically is that boards, charter school boards, it's recommended that they create an independent audit committee or a committee that will oversee the audit that is done by an outside auditor. And we've been doing this, my understanding, since the founding of the school, and the way our bylaws are written, the oversight of audits in particular is through our FNF committee, Finance and Facilities Committee, and so we've been doing this essentially. Doing some, speaking with Patrick, we're doing some research on this and speaking with some of you. There were some of what I read suggested that there could be an advantage to having a separate committee, separate from your finance and facilities to do that. So put together some draft documentation to try to effectuate that, to establish a separate audit committee. And it would be essentially a resolution to create an audit committee, a proposed audit committee charter, which would lay out the duties and responsibilities of the audit committee in relation to compliance with the statutory language and the recommendations from the Department of Education, which they have some proposed audit guidelines. And then it would also include some technical and other amendments to bylaws, because, as I said, the audit is currently in the jurisdiction of the FNF committee, so this would be kind of clarify that, and as well as a few other stylistic edits to the bylaws, just related to record keeping and other things. So that documentation, I believe, will or has been uploaded to the same website where we keep our proposed policies, so that it can be, as we do with our proposed amendments to our policies, it can be the subject of a comment and board review to see what we think about that. And then the idea would be that we would vote on it or amend the version of that at the next meeting. Thank you. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, I just really appreciate the work on this. I think it's, as you were saying, it's a really important addition to the committee structure for the board. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for sort of bringing it back to within our, all the other issues to sort of our attention. And I will say that I think one advantage, of course, is that having a truly a single function committee that allows us to be very focused on something that's very important, which is the oversight of everything that we're doing, and sort of another check and balance to keep all of us honest and make sure, and not just honest, but to make sure that we're not missing things. And so I think it's a good check and a good governance measure. So, any questions or thoughts about that?
I have a thought. So, as I guess the head of the FNF committee, while I would be sad to see audits go, I fully support this. I think that the audit and just reading language is much broader than finance. It includes whistleblower protection, it includes ethics, conflicts of interest, all of that. So it's not just a finance thing. I'm also happy to have one of our 12 meetings not be dominated by the audit, because we have a lot of other things to talk about. That ends up being a meeting that we don't really have time to talk about anything else about. This makes a lot of sense to me. As Anna and I talked about, I do have some questions about people who are probably the most, who know the finances best are on the academic committee, so we need to think a little bit about how do we get that expertise on the audit committee. But it's not just finances, that's the point. So,
And I,
that's my lesson.
no, thank you, and that, this is a proposed, language, but, we wanted, best practices, I guess, would say that I came across when I was kind of looking at how to put this together, and whether to suggest this to the board was that, you know, your finance committee should not be on the audit committee, because that creates kind of not only make less work and you're dividing up responsibilities, but then you're not, then you are having a true sort of check and balance situation.
And now,
That now
yeah, so. I will happily nominate
Merry Christmas. That's the, so yeah, so I think there's some other things like that. And, you know, as we move forward, obviously the thing we vote on next would be on the charter to establish the committee as a one of our regular committees, and then going forward, we can figure out how to staff it and talk about the questions. And it can be a work in progress. It doesn't have to be, one done. But I think it would be a good addition. And,
This is an August approval, we're not trying to do this in our session.
we don't have to. I think that's, I would defer to the group and to Patty and see what we have on there.
We did just check with our auditors to make sure that so we can wait till August. Shelter that with
Just curious about the expanded rules around audits. Would the existing auditors be able, is it an expanded scope?
Yes.
Potentially, and would they be able to do it, or do we have to do additional?
Yes,
Part.
we need to do it, and it's agreed upon procedure, so it's not, that is a little bit different, so they we specify procedures that they have to do. They'll provide a report to QE, and they'll provide a report to the audit committee, and to the board. So this, like, for example, they'll be testing 100 students, which is detailed testing that they for like check where they live and that they're attending school, and if they have IEPs, and if they're regular ed or social ed, so that's what but they do like disbursement testing, and they can be able to use that testing that they're doing.
And I did find it odd, the state guidelines were referred to as the agreed upon, agreed upon guidance, but it never actually said who agreed upon them. It seems like a little bit of a tactic, you sign this agreed upon contract. It was unclear to me that, they looked okay. Anyway, okay,
But I was
So-
expecting a shorter audit.
Okay. Yeah, and obviously, if there's anything in there, that proposal, since it kind of went together quickly, and it sounds like the time, certainly Michelle and, others in the administration, and the board who are seeing it for the first time, feel free to do it, make suggestions, it's all kind of brand new. And we can involve as needed. And there's nothing to vote on that right now. So, moving on to number 11, unless there's any further questions on it. So, 11.1, I'm just going to read this resolution, and then we can get into anything with review or you want to say questions. The resolution, this is the reimbursement resolution Resolution 2026-06-2222, be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of the school that the reimbursement resolution be approved. Patrick, you want to say something?
So, the board actually approved a very similar document or resolution back in August of 2021, as the school was contemplating a high school project back then. This reimbursement resolution simply states that ECS is contemplating a capital project, and it may, doesn't say that it will, but it may contemplate the issuance of public debt, so tax exempt bonds. And it puts notice, this is really essentially for auditors, but it puts notice that henceforth, to the completion of the project, so from the date that this is approved forward, there will be potential expenditures that could be categorized as associated with that project and reimbursed through the proceeds of the issuance of such debt. And so it's really, and again, ECS did that back in 2021. The bond issuance was not executed, but it's essentially kind of sequesters, I don't know if that's the right, but it sort of puts a box or a category on these terms and makes them eligible in a future date, potentially, if we decide to do the bond issuance, for the, be reimbursed by the proceeds of such an issuance. And it doesn't mean that we will, because it didn't happen in 21, but it's a big measure in the event that we might.
And that would include, like, all costs associated with that, with this project.
Exactly, like including the item that's down below at 11.4.
Yeah,
All of the things that are bond finance, basically.
Correct.
Right?
And there would be counsel that would review that and auditors. And there'd be a lot of people, if we went down that road, who would review all those documents. But we want to set the record straight that we're contemplating this, and if we were to go down that road, henceforth, we're going to start categorizing the expenses.
Yeah, that's how a lot of these jobs, right? Myself, that's, makes sense to me. Any other questions on the reimbursement resolution? Comments? All right, then we'll vote on the motion. Second? Second. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, resolution is adopted. Thank you. Thank you. Moving on to 11.2, this is the confidential student agreement, number 060926. I'm going to read the resolution, which is resolution 2026-06-2223. Be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of the school that confidential student agreement number 060926 be approved. And this is the confidential student agreement that I believe that we discussed shortly just a little while ago. So I assume, do you want anyone to say anything else about this?
Thank you.
I assume there's no questions, so we talked about it in the executive session, but are there any questions?
this is also approved to the expense associated with it. Is that
Correct.
So, if, okay, so not, do I have a motion on this? Second? Second. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, motion passes, resolution is adopted. 11.3 is the proposed ECS board officer slate for the 2026-2027 school year. I know Sophie's not at the meeting, otherwise I don't know if she wants to say anything about this, because for the bylaws, this product effectively of the governance committee. I won't make you say anything, Sophie, since I know it's awkward on the cheap seats, but if you want to say something.
I guess that I'll say that we are, still kind of getting things up and running, and so understanding for speaking, all from other people speaking with all of the current executive committee, that they're all willing to continue serving We want to make sure that we have a process moving forward that allows people to express interest and, you know, make sure that we're giving people opportunities to participate as fully as they want. And we appreciate everybody on the executive committee who is giving so much of their time. So feel free to reach out to me if you want to talk to me about these positions. And of course, we can discuss everything right now.
Thanks, I appreciate it. And yeah, and to Sophie's point, and it's, you know, I've certainly said in the past, but, you know, when we think of it, I certainly say to any of us, if you're interested in serving in any type of role, whether it's an executive position or whether it's a committee, you know, we want people on board to feel like their time is being used in a worthwhile way. Each of you, I know, it's given a lot of sometimes very different, but valuable contributions. But I want everybody to feel like they get to contribute. Yeah, we'll keep talking about that and trying to maximize everybody's ability to contribute. Does anybody? I'll read the resolution, and then if there are no comments, I'll or if somebody wants to try to read it, feel free. Resolution 2026-06-2224, be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of the school of the 2026-27 board officers to be approved. Any questions or comments? Okay, before we vote, I just want, I should also say I really appreciate certainly all of my fellow members of the executive committee are willingness to continue to serve this role, and it's been valuable to me and to the school, of course, but I personally appreciate it. So anyway, let's vote. Try a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thank you. 11.4. This is, I'm just gonna, I'll read the resolution and then I'll kick it over to Patrick if you want to say, Patrick.
Yep.
This is resolution 2026-06-2225, be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of the school that EIS, Energy Independent Solutions, quote, be approved.
Yeah, so this is actually an interesting story. So as we work to design the middle and high school building along the river, when we got to the costing out phase with the contractors, the first round, the cost, as you know, came in much higher than we wanted, much higher than the property owner wanted. And we had to start this wonderful term with value engineer, which is, it feels nice, but it really isn't. But anyway, we had to go through a value engineering process. And one of the things that we took out of the project was the solar array that we thought would be perfect for the roof of that building. Our intent at the time was to make sure that we included the infrastructure, so the additional electrical system essentially that we would need and all the conduit for that system, but to not actually build the solar array. That was the idea, so that we could do that not on day one, but down the road. And so there were a number of items like that that we had to part with, so to speak. But I think I mentioned this a couple of times. One of the smartest decisions we ever made was the hiring of Ann Chen. It was literally a genius move, because Ann was like, yeah, okay, I understand that, that makes a lot of sense. And then she didn't say anything. And then she went to work very quietly, and she looked very carefully at this question. And she figured out, and I should just point out, each of the bids that Elmhurst received when they received bids from contractors included the solar array. And so we had lots of information about the cost. They were all kind of the same, but Mascaros was actually the most interesting. And so Anne started talking to them, because they were the selected contractor, but she also started doing her own research, and she figured out the following. I mean, part of this is known to the rest of the world, but Anne really figured it out and dug into the details. There is federal legislation that will allow for the reimbursement of the installation of solar arrays. That legislation has been undercut somewhat by the current administration in the White House. But there is a safe harbor date, July 4th, 2026. And if you purchase a particular percentage of a project by such date, you maintain the safe harbor, assuming all things work out. You know, there's no further damage to the project, et cetera, unless it's a risk. But the safe harbor is preserved, and the entity that makes that purchase or that starts the project, and it's really about purchasing equipment. It starts that project, has until December 31st, 2030 to install the project. And in our case, since we're a nonprofit, and there was some confusion about this in the quote letter, we're a nonprofit. We would not get a tax credit, but we would get a direct reimbursement up to 40% of the cost of the project, assuming we purchase materials and equipment that qualify. And so that's the idea. If we don't do that, there is still the opportunity to receive a reimbursement of a little bit less, but we would have to do it by December 31st, 2027. And as Anne points out, and we spent a lot of time talking about this, there's a lot of stuff to get done in 2027, and if we had to cut something, that might be something that gets cut in order to get students into a building, for example. And so buying the safe harbor to 2030 is actually a good idea for us. So all that is to say, and so Anne did the research and then went out and actually secured additional bids from companies. The company that's being recommended is actually one of the companies that bid on Mascara. They put together the proposal for the Mascara company. So the proposal is to purchase, the proposal is for the board to authorize ECS to purchase an inverter. I'm still trying to figure out exactly. Stan gave me some help, and gave me some help. I'm a historian, I'm not an engineer, but I understand a little bit more what an inverter will do. But the idea is to purchase an inverter before the safe harbor date of July 4th, or to achieve the safe harbor, so we can purchase it before July 4th, 2026. So we're asking the board to authorize us to do this. We still want to do additional review, and we're still not 100% confident. We still have work to do to make this project go. But we would like to be able to execute on the purchase of this if we decide to, essentially before like the 28th or 26th, something like that, of June. So that this company can do this. We're proposing, and I'm sure it's actually in my inbox, I just haven't had a chance to get to it today, but we asked them for the language of the limited notice to proceed, and the idea will be to get legal review and confirm that if we do not go down this road, we do not have to actually install, purchase essentially a solar array system, which with union labor could cost as much as $500,000. We'll still have to go out and bid all of this, but it'll be $500,000 with a potential of a 40% reimbursement rate. So we're looking to get approval so that we can, at the last minute, make a decision and move. So we're not saying that we will do this, but there's a good chance if things keep going as they are, that we will make this purchase. The logical question would be, well, what if we decide not to go down this road and we purchase the inverter or something happens? Two things, I talked to the company representative, Anne's been doing the same. We do intend at some point to do a solar array on the intermediate school. That is a goal that we're working towards. It's very possible that this inverter that we would purchase for the technology drive location could potentially be repurposed to be used at that location. So that's one thing that's possible. And then the other thing is we could resell it. And it doesn't seem to be, given, apparently I didn't understand this until recently, but there's pretty significant demand for this equipment because of this reimbursement. So if we purchase this piece of equipment, there's a chance that we could resell it. Lastly, we're not going to do this right away, so we need somebody to hold on to it. So we talked to them, and they said they would at no cost hold on to it for us so that we have it. So we're just asking for authorization, but you should, if you're going to approve this, it would be with the understanding that we are going to do this with all the final crossing the T's and dotting the I's, and making a determination that we're gonna move forward with this project. And it will be covered by the reimbursement resolution.
In the legal, the thing I was just trying to figure out is why most of the solar tax credit base rate is 30%. Do we know why we?
Because this company, and this can be true for other companies, but they don't, some of the ones that Ann talked to and receive proposals from, they don't necessarily purchase the same qualifying equipment. Most of it is that it has to be purchased or, I think, largely assembled, I don't know the criteria exactly, in the United States of America. And so, if I recall, this is Biden era legislation, and they were trying to drive essentially reshoring of manufacturing through the
There
system.
are also escalators for the credit if it's in certain areas.
Yeah, that's right.
But I wasn't sure what their basis was. Okay.
So one, just, we haven't actually said this a lot, so in a wider audience, but I'll just say one of the things that we haven't talked a whole lot about, what we think would be pretty spectacular is to have a middle school and high school at 743 Technology Drive with a gigantic sign that somehow appropriately and rightly says the environmental charter school, and then right below it, a gigantic solar array. So that's sort of, that is part of what this would contribute to. And I know one other thing, 6-year payback on the solar array if we install
Yeah, I can tell you, we did some significant work on solar array, where we were doing a lot of work with the ECS for similar reasons. So I don't know the details of this particular one, but PwC looked at all of our bids and recommended that they had a slightly better rebate. So it's great. Not the same, but same company.
I assume CMU is also eligible for
So when we're meeting, on the 14th, if we're going to be talking about the project costs and the authorization for loans, the cost of this project would not be included. Would the cost of the full solar array, I think, that would be a future capital project that we have.
That's something that we also want to assess, so that'll be determined based on the base price, the cost of the project, and so if it comes in, we can make that work.
Put it in
And
as well.
so I think that's how we're looking at it at this point.
Okay, great.
It'll also depend on financing, and so where does that sit, so all those things. But just to be clear, that there's a way that we can do this where it does not have to be, like a part of the first wave of work, but it can be folded into that work. So.
Yeah, it's not mandatory, and it could be in there to not be, which depends on what the rest of the project is.
Anything else on this? For the resolution, do we have a motion?
So,
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Perfect. Resolution is adopted. Thank you. Just make the statement.
well, living into the mission.
So the next is 11.5 is just a procedural notifications, advertising notice of our next year's meeting dates. We'll hold regular board meetings for the 26, 27 school year, dates listed on the agenda. We know the dates, but all meetings will be at 6 p.m. We have in person at the ECS Middle School located at 5525 Columbus Street. It's near 1526, unless otherwise advised. And that notice will be also published in the Pittsburgh Post Gazette, which luckily still exists. Of course, with the Pennsylvania Sunshine Act.
Just want to note also,
there you
we're noticing in this notice the July 14th meeting at 5:30, so just want to mention that.
These can be posted online now.
We can also post them online. Great. Well, we're not 100% sure, to be perfectly honest, so we're continuing to go down the path. But at some point, we believe that will be.
And then the July 14th meeting is slated. So, number 12, we have reports, executive committee report. One thing I'll just note, in relation to slate being approved, in theory also, this is, we may need a approval process for this. We'll have to do some meeting, on committee assignments, and if we typically do have the audit committee, the executive committee will, appoint or reappoint, make committee assignments and, assign committee chairs. So reassignment, anybody who has interest in being on a particular committee, wants to switch the committees that they're on, and wants to see what other committees are about, or is interested in chairing a committee, or single rule, or, and again, if we have an improvement on a committee, or interested in being on that committee, or please let me know, or somebody else on the executive committee know. Because we obviously want to have people who are active and interested and have some ideas of places that they want to take these communities and things that they may want to do. That's one thing I will put out there. Start with in terms of the governance committee. Do we have a governance committee report?
Tiffany and I met with Patrick a week or two ago to get things going, and we have a growing list of names for consideration. We have a goal of adding people to the board by early fall. So things are getting going, and we'll be establishing a more regular cadence on things soon.
Terrific. Thank you, Sophie. Appreciate it. How about education?
Yeah, so, as is typical right now, things are somewhat slow, but it's great to allow the leadership team to spend some time reflecting on the year. And we discussed that Mandy is asking the academic leads and principals to do some presentations of things that have happened in their school, specifically around their goals. And that will help them communicate across the school, and the idea that they're all in this together and learning from each other in a way, and then also beginning to think about how to implement the induction plan, right? And so those are some things. There's more to come as they continue to reflect on the year and data that we're getting back from the year, but that's all the education we have right now.
Thank you, Jill. Much appreciated. Finance and facilities. President of the engineering.
Yeah, we don't want secrets to share. Everything's out of public.
I didn't see anything from the ECS.
We don't have a report, but I'd like to just, if I could. So while we don't have a report, I just want to report that we've been in contract negotiations with the ECS FT for a couple of months now, but the dialogue and the negotiations are going extremely well. They've been, not to say that we agree on everything yet, but there's been a lot of movement, particularly of late, and we're really grateful for the work that the teachers are doing. And likewise, we have a new proposal that we received from our paraeducators recently, and we're very excited to dig into that and be responding to that. So we're looking forward to bringing these two contracts, one a first contract and one a first renewal, to completion here in the very near future. And we appreciate the work of all of our youth workers.
Thanks, Patrick, for saying that. I didn't see a PCO report either. So I guess we did get that.
Yeah, I don't think so, but they have approved their calendar for next year. There'll be a meetup this summer at Pioneer. That's the next activity that they're planning. There's a lot of involved in the fun days and here. And hopefully you all are reading the PCO Pulse that will take break for the summer.
Thanks, Eddie. You're always pulling double duty. Appreciate it. Keeping us informed. All right. Well, somehow, amazingly, we're in 13 German. So I'd like to give the meeting, have a motion to adjourn.
So good.
Thank you all very much.
Approved. Thank you, everybody. Really, really, all right.